Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. Again, whether you are just joining in or have listened to one of our 4 excellent previous sessions today, we are certainly really glad you are here. I'm Jamie Machik with the Nicolet Federated Library System in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So my system, Nicolet, along with 13 others, are bringing you this conference virtually, and we do hope you enjoy it. As you may know, we're bringing these sessions to you at no charge. I'm seeing a lot of things being tweeted, how these sessions are free, and that is for sure. That is what we love. But my system would not be able to do this alone, and for that reason, I'm so glad that other systems joined in with ours, and that's why we're able to bring these programs to you. So I'm very happy about that, and I'm sure you are too. So we have a whole schedule of programs also scheduled for tomorrow. We have 5 just like we had today. This is our last one for today. We were just over in New York with Emily. Now we're going back to the West Coast. We're going to hear from Sarah Houghton, and Sarah is the director of the San Rafael Public Library in San Rafael, California, and she's going to talk about keep it simple, keep it real. So take it away, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that audio is working. If things are too quiet or too loud, I'm sure someone will let me know. So today we're going to talk about kind of reality in libraries right now. And a big part of, I think, our reality is that we don't have the ideal amount of resources. That's nothing new. I think it feels worse maybe than it has before, but it's not a new thing for us to be operating with less than we'd like. We can always use more money, but there are still things that we can do in library services that make what we do a little extra special, that can make what we do pretty. And so for today's session, I'm going to try to focus on kind of the practical nature of what I do every day at work, which is, all right, we've got core services, we've got the things that we're supposed to be doing. How can we make it a little extra sexy, a little extra interesting to keep community engagement going, and honestly to keep our own interest as library staffers, to keep our enthusiasm level from going down as it can when we do repetitive tasks over and over again. What are little things in each of our service areas that we can change? So I'll give some examples today. But my recommendation would be, as I'm talking and maybe after today, think about all of the little things that you do at work, whether it's programs or services, and think about little extra things that you could do beyond what I'm talking about today. So I got the idea for this presentation from Portlandia, which is a great show if you haven't seen it. Much of what they say applies to the area I live in too, so it's not exclusive to Portland. It's hilarious. But they have this sketch that I'm not going to play now, but look it up if you haven't seen it. It's called Put a Bird on It. And it's making fun of kind of the trend of hipster-esque everything. All of a sudden there were birds on everything. There were birds on tote bags and T-shirts and lamps, and all of a sudden it wasn't plain, it was extra special because I had a little bird on it. And that is definitely a trend. But in my head, I thought, well, it does. You just put a little paper bird on something, and all of a sudden it is more special. Why is that? And I think it's because it's a little something extra. It's a little something different. It's a little something out of the ordinary, a little something beyond the bare minimum. And so for library services, that's what I think about. What's the bird that I can put on this particular service? What is the little extra something that I can add some flair to this core service? One of the things I deal with regularly at work is the fact that having no real money to do anything awesome, it's really hard to get staff and to get the community super enthusiastic about what we do have. So yeah, the doors are open. Yeah, we have an acceptable amount of stuff to check out. Yeah, we've got an acceptable amount of staff who can help you to your bare minimum levels. But we don't have a flashy maker space. We don't even have an adequately sized program room where we can have enough space for people to come to the story times that we offer. So what can we do that doesn't take money? Where I live in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, is a beautiful place. This is a shot from Marin Magazine. And whenever I get Marin Magazine, I get really excited because I'm like, oh, this is where I live and I love it. And they're talking about all the cool things that we have here. Yay. But then I get this reality check of these gorgeous, insanely oversized homes where I live. For $65 million or whatever spare change you have in your sofa cushions, and I get this reality check of we have such disparate populations where I am, and I know that that's true in other parts of the country as well, where we have people who have $65 million houses who are library users and have a certain set of expectations for service level, for materials, for all that stuff. And then we have people who are living below the poverty level a 5-minute drive away. And balancing those two is really hard. And it's a frustrating reminder of kind of the haves and the have-nots. So one of the principles that I'm using when I decide what birds I'm going to put on things is what can I do that's actually going to be acceptable and useful and fun for both of those populations, and everyone in between, for regardless of someone's age, regardless of someone's interest level, regardless of someone's income, what can we do that would be a nice bonus for everybody? And it's surprisingly difficult to come up with those. It's really easy to come up with little tailored bonuses, which is great, but those bigger ones are harder. So many of us suffer from what I hope you don't suffer from after today, which is you go to a conference, you get super pumped and excited about what you heard. You're like, oh my God, yes, we're going to do that too. That was great. Woohoo! And then you get smacked in the face when you get back to your library. And you begin to become jealous of the people who were talking about all these great things. And you think, well, why is it that they can do it at their library, but we can't do it at ours? And why is it that they have money and staff and space and we don't? It's not fair. We all suffer from that. We also suffer from a good amount of angst. I like to joke that this is my boyfriend from high school. It's totally not, but I dated a little nerdy computer programmer guy. But it is a good photo, and it does demonstrate the true angst that I think many of us feel about not providing A++ level service to all of our users. We don't have the capacity to do everything for everyone all the time, and we want to so badly. Despite the stereotypes of the shushing mean librarians, I think the really accurate stereotype type of a librarian is someone who wants to say yes to everything and everyone and to give more than is humanly possible to give. And we feel bad when we can't. And I think that results in a lot of frustration on our part. And also just fatigue. I mean, the reality of constantly running around, constantly scraping to make ends meet, to get a program put together last minute, to find donations for refreshments for the kids' summer reading party. That kind of stuff on an ongoing basis makes you tired. And I think that's a reality that all of us need to face. It's just, you know what, yeah, it is tiring. It really is tiring. So what are some things that you can do to not hit that fatigue level, or even worse, burnout? You know, when you finally are so tired and so run down that you lose it and you snap and you quit your job or you become apathetic and stop caring. I don't think any of us wants to get to that point. The apathy is something I see a fair amount of, and not specifically at my library, I think everywhere. And to me, apathy is even more dangerous than burnout. I think apathy is what creates bad libraries. Apathy is what creates bad library services. So what can we do to get over that apathy? What can we do to get over the fear that if we try something new, that if we change something up, that if we, oh, I don't know, do something without asking permission first, that we're going to get in trouble? How do we overcome all of those bad things? And I think the answer is, well, you're here today, and so that's step one. There are a lot of things to be really positive and optimistic about in libraries. You know, technology, for all of the workload that it's added for us, has actually made it easier for us to get information to people. So I always tell people who say, well, aren't libraries dead? You know, there's the internet. Come on, there's Wikipedia. You don't need a library. I like to say, no, information is our currency. And anything that makes it easier to get information to people, like the internet, like a telephone, makes it easier for us to do our jobs better. And I think that that's very true. So all of the tech that's come in, the budgets are just starting to look better as the economy recovers, at least stabilize in most places. People are more enthusiastic about library services than they have been because we've had more people using them during the recession. So we've got a lot of cheerleaders out there that we didn't have 5 years ago. And I think now is a really good time for us to position ourselves in the community as a core service that's not thought of as, oh yeah, that extra thing in the county budget or the city budget. People really think of us as more integral today, I believe. And I think that we can capitalize on that by doing things a little bit better than we have up until this point. So before I launch into my examples, there really is no magic pill. I don't have a magical solution, a way to say, oh, do these 3 things and you won't have to worry about community support ever again. I don't have that magic pill, but I do have some ideas on a path forward, and hopefully you will have your own ideas and you can squish them all together and come up with a plan for your own library. So what are some things to watch in terms of bird pudding? And so these are things I'm seeing libraries do. Some of these we're doing at my library, some we aren't. But this is what I'm seeing across the world, really, in terms of how people are putting a little bit of extra special sauce on their services. And the first is partnerships, and truly shameless partnerships. Partnerships are nothing new to libraries. We've been doing this for a very, very long time. We're very good at partnering with schools. Some libraries are great at partnering with local corporations or other nonprofits. But quite often I hear library staff talking about how they don't like partnerships. They don't want to be in a partnership. They don't think it's worth it to be in a partnership. It creates more work than it saves. It makes the library lose control over something, which is absolutely true. You've got half the control you did before you had a partner. What I'm starting to see, though, is libraries getting over themselves in that regard and really partnering with more people in more ways. So one example of that in my library is that we've got a partnership going with our local community media center. They do community television and radio programming that's actually really, really good. And they have a gorgeous Macintosh lab where they conduct classes and let people use them to do really high-end video editing. And they were getting rid of all of their computers. And they just mentioned that to me one day in passing. I said, oh, well, what are you doing with old ones, selling them or something? And they said, no, probably just recycle them. And these were maybe 2-year-old Mac computers. I was like, wait, what if we just took them? What if you gave them to us? And we don't have any kind of a Mac environment now, but we will shortly, because this partnership, this relationship that we've fostered through doing joint programming and content creation for them, and they've helped us with some of our grants, now we're going to get computers that we never would have had otherwise. And I think in the past I might have felt kind of bad about that, like, well, no, we should be able to afford them, and if we're going to get them, we should get the brand new ones, not the 2-year-old ones. And no, this is better than nothing. I think other shameless partnerships that I've seen more in libraries are a lot of corporate partnerships. Libraries really starting to let corporate giving be a part of their general operations. So having a local food company sponsor an event and cater the event with their food, but it's very clear that they're sponsoring it. There's a very clear, this program is sponsored by such and such restaurant. Having people sponsor facilities repairs in the library or improvements or new furniture, computer labs, all sorts of stuff. That corporate element is really starting to be something I think that we're more comfortable with than we have been in the past. And so for me, the little bird here is just thinking outside of our normal partnership capacity, so the people we would normally ask to help us. Let's think where we can go beyond that, and working with other agencies and other individuals that perhaps in the past we wouldn't have. So A good example of that is that we have an online banking and financial planning class coming up for teens. And it's being taught by a local bank, a very big name, mega bank, and it's part of their kind of ongoing outreach. And 5 years ago, I would have said no to a program like that because they are pitching their services as program. But today, without any other way to teach financial planning to teens, you know what? That's better than nothing. And I don't feel bad about it. That's the shameless part. So that's the little extra bird. Look outside the box for partnerships. Another example would be really stepping up your social media interactions. We've had huge success with Facebook and Twitter, huge success. We've had some of our programs double in attendance as a result of us pushing it out this way. We've got a lot of new people in the community who know we exist and who know what services we offer because they haven't really seen us. We haven't been a part of their life. But now, through the magic of recommendations and shares and likes, we've got people interacting with us that we never saw before. And part of that is not taking ourselves too seriously. Part of it is mixing fun stuff with serious stuff. And I think a really big element of trying to seem real, like real people online, and not speaking as, quote unquote, the library, but talking like I would talk to normal people in a conversation. And I would highly recommend that as a really easy and free way to interact with your community. And again, you're going to reach people that you really never saw before. So the extra little bird that I like to put on social media interactions is to let my inner geek kind of shine out and be free. What's funny to me is that the most successful posts that we have are the ones that I think are funny, the ones that kind of tickle my nerdy funny bone. And I think, oh, most of the rest of the community won't think that this is amusing. They're not going to get this. They're not going to care. Those are the ones people like. And it's probably because I'm speaking authentically and being funny and being geeky and nerdy and being okay with that. So whoever, whether it's one person or multiple people you have managing your social media presence, give them the freedom to let some of their personality shine through in their interactions with the community on those sites. Because just as we let our personalities shine through in face-to-face interactions in our buildings, we need to replicate that experience online as closely as possible. Another example, and I love this example. This is a project that was completed at a library just north of me by a children's librarian at the Novato Library. And they had a traditional picture book section, which you can kind of see in the background of this. You know, everything is spine out, those tiny little narrow children's picture book spines that you can never read really well. It was jam-packed full of books, and what they did was they had a special day where they brought little kids in, and they had categories kind of, you know, pre-selected, as you see here, concept things like numbers and letters, nature and animals, holidays, magical things, things that go, which was like trucks and trains and stuff. And they said to the kids, all right, just start grabbing books off the shelves and dump them in the box that makes sense to you. And they had the kids categorize the books. And now the way that they display their materials in the picture book area is all by category. There's a lot more face-out shelving, so you can kind of flip through the books as they're all facing you in these little bins. And everything's organized the way that it made sense to the kids. You know, adults are really good at telling little kids what to do, but in this case, the little kids got to tell the adults what to do, and I love it. They did have to weed their collection and do it, but they did it by kind of thinking outside of the norm of how to make this happen. You know, they could have come up with a really big, complicated classification system that was subject-based with color coding and blah, blah, blah. No, they let the kids pick. They let the kids do it because it's for the kids. So maybe there's something like that that you could do in your library to make some of your collections a little bit more visible, more accessible, more useful to certain populations. So I think that's a fun one to think about extending to other areas of the library. Another huge trend, little libraries, not a new trend, but a very popular one and seemingly ever expanding. And that is easy to do and usually free or cheap to do. You can get building supply stores usually to donate the materials for whatever you need to put the thing in place. And it's something that the individual neighborhood or community tends to really love. And when they find out that it's something that the library made, they love the library even more. It's a great way to get word out about programs and services you have, because you can just leave a little pile of cards or bookmarks or pamphlets in there, and people can grab one of those when they grab a book. These have become extraordinarily popular. And having just moved in the town that I work in, my plan is to try to find a good place to put one of these up in my neighborhood. And I would recommend one caveat, and this is the library director in me raising her evil, ugly head. Do check with your public works department before you do something like this, because there might be rules or code or regulations that you have to follow to put something like this up, especially if it's on public property or a thoroughfare. You can't like block a sidewalk or anything, but just check. Just ask. That's like probably the only time I'll ever say you need to ask permission before you do it. All the rest of the times you just do it, and if somebody doesn't like it, I'm sure they'll tell you later. But this one, you don't want to mess with Public Works. They will kill you. They're very nice people, but they will kill you. All right. So another thing that we can do, we have all of these events, right? All of us do. Every week we've got stuff going on. Some of them are regular things like story times. Some of them are special events, classes, lectures, special speakers, author readings. And I highly, highly, highly recommend making an investment in getting a very simple video camera with a good microphone and doing some live casting and record those events and put them up afterward as well. It's super easy to do. All of the software and the hosting for these things is free online. All you need to do is buy that camera and a good microphone, and you're off to the races. We have not started doing this yet. It's on the strategic plan for this year, hoping to start very, very soon. But in looking at the traffic numbers, the engagement that libraries who do this get from their communities, it's astounding. And it doesn't take very long before you have this huge library and archive of past events where people, if they want to do a story time for their kid, they can literally just sit them down in front of your YouTube storytime channel and listen to story times for 3 hours without stopping because you recorded 3 months worth of story times. It's really easy to do. Just be careful about copyright, be careful about the audio quality. People forgive kind of crappy video quality pretty easily, but you want to make sure your audio is up to par.
Sarah?
But this isn't really, yeah.
Do you ask patrons permission before you film them at Storytime?
Nope. That is not legally required. It's not legally required to ask. It's not legally required to get people to sign a form. It's not at all legally recommended to do that from most attorneys. What we do as a courtesy, and what a lot of places do, is just simply say at the beginning, we are filming this. If you don't want you or your child to be in frame, you know, if you sit on this half of the room, we won't be able to see you. Or if you're filming it from behind, you can say, you know, we'll be pointed at the back of everybody's head. And if you don't want to be seen, just don't turn around. It astounds me how many places still require these photo release forms or permission to video forms. It's not legally required. And if you're in a library that has those, I would say that's a fight worth fighting, because it's really hard to do stuff like this if there are that many hoops to jump through in order to make it happen.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So something else that you can do super easy, some programs like this have been around for a while, is to have some kind of a technology boot camp. We did this at our library where we had a series of classes about different topics. What I like about what Louisville did, though, is that they kind of phrased it as a boot camp, and they had these cute little dog tag icons and really made it like a collecting a badge experience. And I think badge rewards, as much as they've been discussed over the last 10 years, still work. Our little human brains love getting little prizes, little stickers, badges, whatever they are. People love that stuff. It's amazing how much effort people will put forth in order to get a little trinkety toy thing that says, hey, I did something cool. So if you have classes like this, And most of us do. Most of us have something like that. You might not have 10 different classes, maybe you have 3. Somehow package them together and make it more of an ongoing experience where people can actually say, yes, I completed all of the social media courses, and here are the 3 little trinkety things that I have to show that I finished it. I know one library gave people little teddy bears at the beginning and then made little buttons, and the teddy bears had little sweaters, and so people would put the buttons for what they had achieved on the teddy bear sweater. That's cutesy. I think it would work for some people, maybe not others, but why not? Why not give it a try? Think about how you can badgeify some of your different courses, your different classes, even things like book clubs. You could get a badge for each book you read, and then people can kind of have some pride that they went to every freaking book club meeting that year, and they've got them all. People like to collect stuff. It's kind of funny. Another thing that's been a trend is really hyper-local focus for libraries, as well as the rest of every other field. This real localization of talent and sharing has been great, and you see people collecting local creations with libraries, whether it's a physical or a digital collection. The 2 biggest areas have been local music and local authors. And you can find a lot of libraries that have done big databases full of people's their creative work, and a lot of it's available through libraries now, online for free, mostly without digital rights management, because your local creators just want to share what they've done, and to share it with their neighbors is even better. I think this is a really good example of one. This is from Iowa City Public Library. A library north of me has a good local author example, the Sonoma County Library, and I just think it's a good way to reward and encourage creativity in your community and enhance discoverability for everyone else who maybe doesn't create but can appreciate those who do. And a lot of us have had little local collections, specific shelves devoted to just local authors or local musicians or whatever, and now we can do that in other ways and move that online and actually have it accessible by more people in an easier way, which is great. One of the questions I just got is, how do you get the word out about looking for local artists? A way to do it that I would recommend is first starting with your local music stores, and I don't mean music like CDs or Best Buy, whatever, like musical instrument stores or equipment rental stores for musicians and DJs, because a lot of them have the right connections to know who the performers are, who the bands are, who the artists are. Another way to tackle it would be to talk with the local venues and have them help you get the word out about making their material available. There are a lot of, depending on how big a town or a city you're in, the bigger ones tend to have kind of little, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it a social group, but more of an informal network between performers. Some of them actually have formal associations. Some of them are just, oh yeah, we all get together, once a week at this bar, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a lot of ways you can get the word out. The wrong way to get the word out is to just advertise it in the library, because a lot of these people probably don't come into the library, probably don't look at the library website. So as with all things, you have to go where they are. That's really pixelated. Sorry about that. So another idea is really folding in other things into story time to make it more, a little bit different, a little extra pop. And there's this idea of tablet tales. And I got this from Ken Campbell, a great librarian who really has focused on using digital tools for literacy, whether those are storytime apps, whether it's using tablets and screens and interactivity to talk to people during the story time, to not just have it be a person offering the story time, but to have it be an engaging multimedia experience where you have the little kids come up and turn the pages of the book on the iPad, or you've got it projected onto a big screen behind you, and you've got the little bunnies jumping around in the little animated book app. I really think that that's an interesting way to not only amp up story time, but to help meet one of our goals, which is really looking at multimedia literacy and engagement for all ages. And I think you're going to have to deal with a few parents who say things like, I don't like my kid looking at a screen. I don't want you to show my child an iPad. I don't want them to know what an iPad is. iPads are evil. They rot your brain. You will have a few people who say that, but the people who like it will vastly outnumber them. And my guess is you'll see attendance increase, and people will be amazed and surprised that you are so forward-thinking and in touch with technology, because aren't we all just a bunch of dusty old books in a room? So that's one idea. Here's a simple idea that everybody can do. Having an open house. Super simple, very cheap to do, if not free, if you can get food and beverages donated. We had one of these, and while a large number of the attendees were people who were already somehow involved with the library, either as volunteers or longtime patrons, we did have a number of new faces show up. And it was a great way to kind of let them see the library while we were closed. It was kind of we had a little behind-the-scenes tour where we were taking people into the depths and the bowels of the library, like, oh my goodness, this is technical services, and here's what happens here. And I really didn't think anybody would care about that, but the number of people who thought that that was the most exciting part of the open house, getting to see administration, getting to see our storage closet, it was shocking. Like, they thought that was the best thing ever because it's a part that they usually don't get to see. Super easy to do. Like I said, you can do it completely with donated funds, and it just helps get the word out about what you do. And if you sexy it up by, the underground library tour, I think that's a good little bonus. I wanted to talk about maker stuff very briefly because that's been an area that I think has kind of transformed a little bit from its beginnings. And I think what Detroit Public Library has done has been a good model, in my mind, for us to look at for replicating this in libraries that don't have a lot of money, don't have space, and don't have a ton of time. So what Detroit did was that they started with the Height Maker Space, which was initially just this little, basically a converted study room that they just slapped some beautiful paint on and put in some things. You can see stuff in the photo like bike repair kits, sewing machines, musical instruments, computers, nothing super crazy, but stuff where you could repurpose this space depending on what you wanted to do. Where they did something that was different from what other libraries did was that they didn't focus on the space. They focused on the programs and the classes and the outreach and the engagement. And so I think now you're hearing less people talk about maker spaces, and you're hearing more people talk about maker programs, which is completely doable for any library regardless of financial resources or time or size. You can put together some really simple maker programs of thousands of different kinds, have them be taught by local volunteers if the staff don't have the expertise or the time. If you have some money to throw at having some equipment that can be shared use in the library, that's a wonderful bonus. But just giving people the opportunity to meet other people who create the kind of stuff they create is a service in and of itself. So I like to joke, we have a maker program, and someone said, well, no we don't. What do we make? We don't have that. I said, no. We have that little crochet club that meets at our branch library once a week. And they do a different crochet project every month, and they do it all there during the different classes during the month, and then they're done, and then they move on to another one. They're making stuff. That's a maker program. We've had cooking classes. That's a maker program. If you're making stuff, if you're creating stuff, if you're going away with something that didn't exist before, that's a maker program. And I think we need to do what a lot of other libraries have done now, which is to shift our mind away from, well, I can't have this, I can't afford a 3D printer and all this craziness. That's fine, but you can still do stuff where you really encourage creativity, and if you have that money for those pieces of equipment that can facilitate that, all the better. But maybe just rethink maker, rethink what that is and how you define it. and maybe you'll see some more engagement and creativity coming out of your community. One example of this with really repurposing a space in an interesting way is the idea box, and I love this. This is at the Oak Park Library, and if you haven't heard of this, it's really cute. They do a different thing with this room. It's kind of a rotating display area or engagement area, and it's never the same thing twice. So this example, they had people write their wishes on a star and put them on the wall, and everybody else could read their wishes. They also had one where people wrote postcards with a lesson that they had learned while traveling. If it was, an adventure or something scary happened, and then they put these postcards up and people could see what everyone had learned while traveling. And so it changes, it rotates, but it's a way for people in your community to share their stories. And to me, the kind of extra little sexy part of this is that it's always new. And so you're always going to have some kind of place where people, when they come into the building, will say, oh, I was just here to pick up my book that I had on hold, but you know what, give me a second. I want to run over here and see what they're doing with that space this month. And if you do it on a monthly basis, you're going to hit a lot of people who do come in as the books are due that you wouldn't normally get to stay in your library other than to just come in and check something out. So I love that idea of kind of creating a really cheap and easy way to increase community engagement with the physical library space. Another really important thing, and again, this is my evil director self coming out, is a lot of us have kind of accepted the fact that we have reduced resources, we have less stuff that we can get, we have inadequate spaces, and as the economy is starting to recover and our reality is changing, now is the time to get in our governing agencies' faces and to say, okay, let's say you guys end up with an extra $100,000 in the budget this year. This is what the library could do with that money. You want your support groups, you want your boards or commissions, you want your regular power users to show up at meetings and to say, I love the library, they're awesome, but you know what they really need? They really need X. Whether it's something small, like, they need money so that they can pay their performers instead of always begging for volunteers. Maybe it's something big like a new building. But now is the time to ask, and now is the time for the community to be vocal and to tell your stakeholders and the people who make the decisions what's most important to them. And doing it in a positive way, not a confrontational way, not a you guys are so mean to us way, but this is important to us and you're doing great, but here's how you could do even better. That's the message we really want to communicate, and if you're able to do that successfully, that's how you get the increased resources to do other things other than slapping little birds on things. You can just buy a whole aviary. That's the ultimate goal. Okay, so I'll stop being super serious now. Well, it's a little serious. Demographics is really important. I don't know, every community is going to be different, of course, so I don't know what your community looks like or if it's any different now than it was 10 years ago. Ours has shifted dramatically. The composition of language speakers in our community has shifted. The age ranges have shifted. Parents versus not parents has definitely shifted. Income level has shifted. And if you're not watching these demographic trends, you're kind of at a disadvantage. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at the key demographic information for your community and how it's changed over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years, and start planning for the future now, and start planning for what kinds of programs, services, collections you're going to need to have in 5 years, and start getting ready for that right away. The nice thing about that, instead of just being reactionary like we usually are, is that as new people come into the community in these new demographics, a lot of times they'll go into a library and see that the library doesn't represent them. It doesn't represent their needs, it doesn't have what they want, and they don't come back. And if you're ahead of the curve and you're actually offering stuff before that population hits critical mass, they come in, they see, wow, the library does have stuff for me and stuff that I'm interested in, wow, I'm going to tell my other friends who are in the same demographic group, and then they're going to know that there's stuff at the library for them too. And it's surprising how easily we can forget about this stuff and just keep doing what we've been doing forever, even though your community might have changed dramatically. So if you haven't kind of done a step back and look at what you've got, now's a good time. I mean, 5 years ago was a good time too, but now's a good time. We talked a little bit about all the local talent we have. We talked about kind of acting as a repository and sharing vehicle for people's creations. But there's so much local talent in every one of our communities that we can totally exploit mercilessly. There are people with amazing skill sets who want to share those with others, and they will happily come in to the library and do it. And I think traditionally we've really closed ourselves off to what libraries can do, what kinds of programs we can have, what kind of stuff we want to offer. And I would encourage you to open your mind up to what kinds of local talent you could use in providing library services. So instead of just thinking, oh, do we have a really good storyteller? Yeah, we have this guy who knows about the Apple iOS. We'll have him come in and do some little technology classes. And we've got this local poet, so we'll have her come in and MC a poetry night. That's all very, very traditional. But we have so much other talent out there. So right now we have a series of programs at our library having to do with our one book, one county type of event coming up that focuses on growing stuff, making stuff, but food, very specific to food. And so we just found a ton of local people who are amazing at what they do with growing and making and preparing and canning and whatever. And they're just teaching classes, like super happy to do it. We're getting record levels of attendance at these classes. And all we did was ask. We didn't promise anything. They didn't want money. They just wanted to come and share what they knew how to do well. So we've got a beekeeper coming in a couple of weeks. We just had biodynamic gardeners teach a class. I'm teaching a class about making beer because that's what I know. We've got someone teaching a class about making cheese, keeping chickens and how to do so, safely and within the city code. All this stuff that people know how to do, harvest that, exploit it. People love sharing what they love, and you've got those people in your community. Grab them, use them. And if you can, do this. Create some kind of a signature event that your library is known for. So what this is for us is our art talks. And where this came from is that we're just north of San Francisco, and all the big museums are in San Francisco, which makes sense, beautiful, whatever. We don't have museums up here, really. So whenever anybody wants to go to a big exhibit, whether it's an art exhibit, any kind of big musical event, it's always, oh yeah, I'm going to go into the city. Well, what we did was we brought the docents from all these different museums up to San Rafael, and as each new collection or exhibit launches in San Francisco, usually that same week or two during the launch there, they'll come up and do a guided docent tour of the collection digitally at our library, so that the seniors who can't get into the city or who don't want to make the hour trek to the museum don't have to. They just have to drive down the road, and they can see the full tour of everything that's there without ever leaving San Rafael. And I was surprised at how popular this became. We get 200 to 400 people at every one of these. We have little old ladies pushing each other over in their walkers to get seats. I'm not kidding. We had someone fall, and I just was praying she didn't break a hip. Thankfully she didn't. But they will push each other to get into this event. And it's become what we're known for. Other towns know us for having this. People come from all over the county and the counties surrounding us to go to these so that they can see this awesome stuff without coming into the city. And if you can have something like that for whatever reason strikes a chord with your community, you'll get so much good publicity for that all the other stuff you do that you're trying to push, you're trying to let people know about, will become a lot easier because you've got this one thing people already associate with you positively. So highly recommend doing this. It may not be art talks for you. It might be something totally different. It just depends on your community. Another suggestion I have is to try Kickstarter or any of the other fundraising sites like it. More libraries are doing this in order to raise funds for a specific project. So here's a really good example. Santa Cruz was doing a series of art installations, and the library wanted to coordinate it, and so they did. But they needed $5,000 to get it started. And so they crowdfunded and crowdsourced the funding and got 65 people who met their pledge easily, and it's wonderful. And this is the kind of thing that you can get community excitement behind. The way these sites work, if you've never done it before, is that if you pledge, you get something back. So you might get first entrance to the shows. You might get a card from the creator with a signed cartoon of your pet. You might get whatever it is that you're doing. You get little rewards. And again, people will do stuff for rewards. They'll give you $60 towards a project if it means that their name gets listed at the end of your movie. So think about things like this. If you have a project you've been wanting to do for a long time but just don't have the money, here's a way to get the money and to use your community to help fund it without being all library-centric and thinking, oh, we have to go through the friends of the library to raise money and blah, blah, blah. No, you can do it this way too. And it's worked for many libraries. Prettify things if you can. Our library is not very pretty, but we try to make it as pretty as we can by adding plants and flowers and cute little colorful decorations, by using bright colors to take attention away from the cream white walls and the faded magenta carpeting. Whatever little things you can do to make your environment more appealing to the community, the better. One person I know just went to IKEA with a half-dozen staff, and they said, okay, we have a budget of $200, let's buy everything we can to make the library look better. They left with a whole bunch of little accessories and fabric and little clips and tools, and the library looked totally different the next day with almost no investment at all. And I think little things like this are things we overlook because we're so used to looking at the building every day that we forget you can do little things to make it nicer. So prettify things if you can. Be funny if you can. One of the great things that I've really enjoyed about libraries getting into social media as heavily as they have is that you really have seen senses of humor come out, and I'm starting to see that bleed over into our physical space. One of our librarians a while ago came down, and she had this sign that she had printed for our oversized book collection and said, oh, I don't know if I can put this up, so I thought I should ask first. I don't want to get in trouble. I said, okay, what does the sign say? And her sign said in big letters, I like big books and I cannot lie. Now, I thought that was hilarious, and my reaction was, of course you can put that up. That's amazing. We put it up, got a good reaction. A lot of people thought it was funny. People started checking out the oversized books, which they never did before. But it was because we didn't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, the worst thing that was going to happen was what? Somebody would complain that that was a tasteless reference to a song that used a different word than books, and oh my gosh, can't talk about butts in the library. So what? You know, willing to deal with that if it happens. But you have to have the courage to be funny. You have to have the courage to let your personality shine through. And when you're a real person, people will react in a real way to you. So be funny. Don't be afraid to be funny. Another idea that I have is kind of changing the language that we use about what we offer. We often talk about what we have. We either say, oh, it's free, or oh, there's no charge for it. Instead, talk about it as gifts. The library has a gift for you. It's that we no longer charge exorbitant overdue fees on our audiovisual materials. The library's gift to you is museum passes that you can print at home for free so you can take your kids to the aquarium with no charge. Change it to a gift mentality and gift phrasing. And this photo kind of crystallizes that idea for me. This was taken at Burning Man, which is based on a gift economy, the idea that people exchange things in a very free and open way. And I love what this person did, which was to think, what do people need in the desert? They need fruit really badly. Like, for a lot of reasons, they need fruit. And so she dressed up in a monkey suit, walked around giving away different fruit, bananas, mangoes, pears, and people loved it, and it was just pure gifting. And I think that that idea of it's not free, it's a gift. Our gift to you is this, is a much better way of describing our services than I think the way we have to date. So it's something I'm trying to do, and I think it's a good idea. I'll let you know if it fails though, but I think it's a good one. A really big piece of a lot of what I've talked about requires some kind of willingness to try something new, some kind of courage to go out on a limb, maybe get in trouble, maybe get a complaint or two, but the positive reaction will more than likely make up for that in spades. And whereas I think we again have that stereotype of our profession as being reserved and quiet and timid, you can't be that anymore and be successful in a library. You haven't been able to do that for a very long time. And we've seen personalities change. We've seen the types of people who are going into librarianship or who want to work in libraries change, because it's not about just books. It's about customer service. It's about doing new and innovative things. It's about changing, everything changing on a daily basis, about learning new stuff every day. And you really have to be willing to go for it and to take risks and to be strong, to fight for what you believe in, to be vocal, stand up for your users. And I know that you can do that, but it is required. You can't do this if you're scared. One thing I did want to point out is that a lot of what we're talking about was about making things sexy or making things, you know, a little bit extra special. But it's not about that. It's not about the badges for the technology boot camp. It's not about, you know, hanging a new IKEA light fixture in your teen area. It's not about the sexy. It's about what that enables. It's about the stories that happen when people are able to learn and be entertained and share with each other and build community. It's about the feelings they experience when they use library services. That's what lasts. The little sexing it up part is just an easy way to facilitate this happening more. But it's not what it's about. It's not just about making it sexy. It's about creating those good stories and feelings. So put a bird on it. Think about all the things that you do and what are the projects on your plate or in your area of responsibility that you could put a bird on, and what you could add that's just a little extra something, that's a little something different, out of the ordinary, that makes it a little bit more fun, more engaging, more rewarding for your community. This is my favorite example, which is my headshot for work, which was my bio photo for this event. It's boring. It has a gray background. I look all serious. I've got pearls on, whatever. I asked a friend to make it cooler, and he put lasers in the background. So this was how I put a bird on my own department headshot, and now the other department heads are jealous because I have lasers in my glamour shot, and they don't. So you can literally put a bird on anything. You can put a bird on your headshot. So overall, ask the people that you're serving what would make their lives easier. That's going to help you guide you in terms of what services you're focusing on. And I love this. I'm drunk and you're insane. Who's going to lead us home? You're going to lead yourself home. You're going to drive your own library's process. You're going to drive your own library's future. And you have the ideas. You have the enthusiasm. It's just a matter of letting them go and go free and acting on those things that you've had in the back of your head all of those years. So have those ideas, pull them out of the closet, make them reality, and help contribute to the solution of making our libraries a brighter place for the future. So that's it for me. Happy to take any questions or thoughts, or people want to share things that they're doing. That'd be great too. So thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. As she mentioned, we have a little bit of time if you have a question for her, or as she said, if you want to just merely share something you're doing in your community that you're putting a bird on, or if you're thinking of something that you could enhance, feel free to share that as well. We like sharing ideas in these programs. Sarah, we had a speaker for our system a couple months ago who talked about how the shift in library is kind of becoming this facilitator, that maybe libraries are not necessarily going to spend several $100s on bringing in a clown, or that's a bad example, but something of that nature where, yeah, it might bring in a lot of kids, but it also costs a lot of money, and we're really becoming these community facilitators where we're bringing we're providing the space, we're providing space and a place for people to create and that sort of thing. So I'm just curious on your opinion of that, and do you think libraries are going to totally shift that way, or do we have to find kind of a balance between the two?
I think what I've seen is mostly a function of reality of accessibility of funds, I think. So I've really seen people do exactly what you're talking about, moving away from paying boku bucks to some high-end puppet show person or a really well-known author to make an appearance, and instead kind of using more local crowdsourcing and getting that local talent in to share whatever it is that they do. I think it mostly will depend on the individual library and the direction that the leadership and the staff there want to take. I still think there are going to be tons of libraries who have money to pay people tons of money to come do something who will continue to do that.
Sure.
And then there are going to be other libraries who don't, who can't, or who choose not to. I think the real key is making those community connections where if somebody says, hey Sarah, do you know somebody who knows how to make honey or make butter from scratch, I can say, yes, I do. And I can point to that person in the community who does that. Or do you know somebody who does book art, making art objects out of discarded books? Yes, I know who to ask in our community. I think that that's kind of the newer role for libraries, is being aware enough and connected enough to the community to facilitate those kinds of connections. I think that's somewhat new for us.
Great. You also mentioned how at the beginning, and I'm hearing this a lot, and I'm glad I'm hearing it, that we can't be everything to everybody, and it bothers us and it hurts us, but we just can't. So why do we have that mindset, and how do we get away from that and feel okay about it?
That's a good question. Why do we feel that way? I think, I don't know, we're givers. We're like that emotionally abused boyfriend or girlfriend who just gives and gives and gets nothing back. I think that's just a personality trait that you see in a lot of
I think you're right. We do give a lot.
And not just libraries, yeah. I mean, you see it with teachers, you see it with nurses. I mean, you really do see this just like give, give, give mentality. I think without worrying about kind of getting rid of that, because I do think that's inherent to us as individual people. It's part of our personalities that probably carries through at home too. Instead of trying to get rid of it, I guess I would say just come to some level of acceptance that while it would be great if you had 100 times your budget, and it would be great if you had a 3,000-hour work week every week to get everything done you wanted to do, that's just not reality. And so accepting the limitations that are in place and thinking, the way I think of it is this: where am I going to get the most bang for my buck in terms of how I spend my time, how I spend my money, what's going to positively affect the most people? It might not be what I think is the most important service. It might not be what I would prefer to be doing with my time in terms of just personal preference, but it really is, where can I get the most out of what I do put in and what resources I do have. So it's not going to be buying the $800 reference set on gemstones.
Right.
It's going to be maybe redirecting that money toward board books that I know are going to circ like mad and get used and damaged and we'll have to throw them away, and that's okay. So it's really just, I think, that making peace with taking what you have and doing the most that you can with it, and that's super hard.
It is hard. One last question before we wrap up for today. So in a utopian world, what would a library look like for you if you didn't have budgets, or a city council, or a county, or what does the perfect library look like for you?
Oh, don't make me dream. I have to go back.
Come on. I'm throwing that to everybody today. So
yeah, I mean, I think for me, the ideal library has two components. One is ample and comfortable space, really open space, open areas that are visually appealing, have design elements that are stunning, the spaces that you want to be in, that you want to spend time in. So to me, that's really important. And the other element of what a library would have is truly utopian, which would be to have at least digital access and hopefully some physical access to every creative work created ever. To not have the limitations that we have right now with physical copies, with stuff being out of print, with copyright, with digital rights management, to truly having such an open door that we could say to people, come here and we can get you anything that you could possibly dream of that you want. That would be my ideal library.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we're going to end for today. Thank you so much, Sarah. As always, an excellent presentation and a lot of food for thought. I hope I see a lot of you tomorrow. We have another round of 5 excellent sessions lined up, and we'll start here again at 9 o'clock and go until 5. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for everyone who helped out today, and we will hopefully talk to all of you tomorrow. Good night.